video tutorial for the personal branding accordion card. If you're looking for this template, you can find it on our Etsy shop. This is the, go to homepage. So it's designfullytemplates.com. If you go over to the left-hand side of your screen, and you'll see the different categories of products that we offer. Just click on accordion cards and click on the personal branding template. And this is what it looks like when it's laid out flat. The panels in InDesign and in Photoshop are going to be set up in single pages. This is necessary for when you're uploading it to the printer. And we'll get to that at the end of the video, and I'll show you how to upload that. I also have a folder open with all of the marketing images I like to use for my headshots and personal branding. I keep this on my Dropbox. I can access it at any time. And I separate my photographs in my folders by genre. So this one would be headshots and personal branding. I have another one for mothers and daughters, for glamour, and so on and so forth. I first want to show you how to add images. It's pretty quick and simple, but I want to cover this Pages panel right here. This is one of the features about InDesign that I love so much, is that when you create a document like an accordion card that needs 10 panels, you can put all of those pages into one file. So when you open it up, all the pages are right there for you. You can scroll through them and see them all at one time. In Photoshop, every single one of these panels is its own individual file, and you'll have to open those up separately to work on them. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to use my Move tool, which just looks like the one that we have in Photoshop. It's the selection tool. Looks like a black arrow. I'm going to click on my graphic frame. This is the full page image for the front of the card. And we need to delete the placeholder image that's in there. So I want you to go to Object, Select, Content. That's going to select the placeholder image I have in that graphic frame. And we're going to click Delete. So just click Delete on your keyboard. And that's going to empty up our graphic frame so we can add an image to it. I like to find a real great hero image, and that's something that really represents what you're offering for headshots or personal branding. Something that's really going to grab the attention of the person you're giving this card to. I'm going to click and drag an image in here. And I'm just hovering it over that graphic frame and releasing my mouse so that it places the image in there. If you do not want to do the drag and drop option, you can click on that graphic frame again with your Move tool or your Selection tool and go to File, to Place, and then look for your folder that has your images. Mine's automatically opened up to that. I had saved it on my desktop, and later I'm going to move it back into the Dropbox. I'm going to locate that image again. I'm going to select it and click Open. This is going to place the image directly into your graphic frame. Now I want to enlarge the image because she has too much space above her head. So I'm going to click my Direct Selection tool, and that's the one with the white arrow. And if I click on my graphic frame, it's going to select the image that's inside that graphic frame. And you can see these little red anchor points. Hold down your Shift key, and just like we do in Photoshop, we're going to drag the image out. We can make it a little bit bigger. I think I'm going to go to the edge and see how that looks. I'm going to select off, just going into the gray area of my document, and I'm going to click W on my keyboard, and that's going to show me what my file would look like with the edges cut off. So if it's already gone to print, it's trimmed off. I'm not really liking the way that's cropped in here, so I'm going to use my arrow keys to move the image over just a little bit. And I think that looks a little bit better. And I don't want her head going over the edge, so I'm going to bring that in again. Bring that down just a little bit. I'm going to click on the W again. I want to make sure that this image goes all the way to our bleed line. And the bleed line is indicated by this red arrow, or sorry, this red line. Okay, so this line is your bleed line. This is where your image needs to go all the way to the edge. This black line is your trim line. This is where, when it goes to get printed, this gets trimmed off, everything outside this black line. This pink or magenta line is our safe area. This is where we want to keep all of our text inside this area so it doesn't get trimmed off. All right, I don't think this image is giving me quite the look I was going for. It's also not very contrasty with the picture that, with the text I have here. Even though we can edit that and change the colors of our text, I want to keep this very simple just by adding the right picture. So I'm going to drag another image in here. And yes, I'm using a horizontal image, but what I want to do is expand the size of this image and give it a different crop. So I'm going to go to Object, Fitting, to fill content proportionally. Oops, wrong one. Object, Fitting, fill content, fit content proportionally. Also didn't do the right. What I want to do is hit it so that this image is enlarged from top to bottom and it takes up more space in my frame here. There, oops. That distorted it. This is a bit of a little trial and error here. It's been a while since I've used anything other than fill frame proportionally. There we go. So now I'm going to just click on the image that's inside our graphic frame with that direct selection tool again. And I'm just going to incrementally move this over with my arrow. And I'm going to bring the top part of this image up a little bit closer, and then I'm going to hit W again so that I can see what this looks like. So we're getting a little bit better. I can change the color of that text. So I'm going to click on my type tool, and I'm going to open up my swatch panel, move this out of the way. And I'm going to use my type tool to select this text. Then in my swatch panel, I can see that the foreground color of the text, not the outline, but the fill is a gray. I want to switch it to paper white. It's a little easier to see. I'm selecting the other text that's gray and changing that to white as well. And going back to my move tool to deselect. And I think we got a great image there. So let's go to, and you can see it looks a little bit grainy. That's just the preview for the program. It doesn't mean that my image is low resolution. So I'm just going to view to overprint preview, and it's going to show me more of a crisp, sharper image so that I can see that it looks closer to what it's going to look like when it gets printed. So in the Pages panel, I'm going to click on Page 2, and I'm going to add another picture in here. And I'm just going to use the click and drag method again. Oops, forgot one step. With the selection tool, we need to delete that placeholder image that's in there again. Go to File, Object, Select, Content. That's selected, click Delete. Now what's left is an empty frame, but we also have our, there's an outline around it to make it look like a matted print. So I'm going to click on my image again and drag it into here. And now we have a beautiful image filling in that space. And you can edit any of this text if it doesn't really fit what you want to say about your headshots and personal branding. It's entirely up to you, or you can leave the text the way that it is and just add in your own content and your contact information and of course your logo. So I'm gonna scroll down to page 3 this time instead of using the Pages panel to select it. And again, I'm gonna use my move tool, select the graphic frame, and go to Object, Select, Content, and delete that placeholder image. And we're going to find another image to fill in here. Here we go. So drag that in there. I like to do every other picture kind of boy, girl, changing up the look back and forth. So the next frame, the next page is all text. We don't need to add any pictures to that. Even if you did, it would this text would be covering up everything here that would be necessary to see the picture in the first place. So I'm just going to leave this as it is, and then I'm going to go to page 5. Again, I'm going to click on the graphic frame tool, go to Object, Select, Content, Delete, and I'm going to add an image to this. And we're going to move on to page 6, repeating that same step to delete that placeholder image. And let's see. Good. Page 7. Again, I'm going to select that graphic frame tool, delete the placeholder image. This does have some placeholder text. This is what graphic designers call lorem ipsum. It's just fake text to kind of give you an idea of how much text will fit into that area. So if you have a favorite quote, this is where you would put it. If you're not really sure what to put there, you can also use it as a client quote as well. And all you do is use your type tool to select that text, and you can change that text that's in there. Select, I like to break it up and give it a little bit of a kind of a graphic look to it by having 2 different lines of text in different colors and different sizes. So basically, the emphasis of the quote at top and the bottom is a little bit smaller. So this is just select, copy and paste it in, or sorry, copy it from an external source and paste it in, or you can type it manually yourself. So I'm using my selection tool to click on that empty graphic frame, and I'm going to fill it with another photograph. Let's see how this fits in here. This one might be too wide. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, if your image comes in too large, go back to your selection tool and select that graphic frame and go to Object, Fitting, to fill frame proportionally. And that will just fill the entire image with the proportions from the top to the bottom. So from this top to this bottom. And once we're done, we're going to go on to the next page, 8. And delete that the placeholder image to put in a new photograph. And this is another testimonial spot. You can choose between which one you want to be the testimonial or you just want to have a nice quote. I gave you 2 options here. If you want 2 testimonials, you can actually copy this text box. So I'm going to hit Edit to copy, and we're going to go to that page that had the quote. You can move this out of the way and place another quote box in here, and you can change the color of the text and change that to white so you can see it a little more easily over this colored image. And then you can put in a testimonial or client quote specifically from the person that this photograph is of. I'm going to hit Command Z to go back to what we had on the template originally. And we're going to go back to page 9, select that graphic frame, and delete our placeholder image and put in a new image. A lot of my pictures here are horizontal orientation, and this is a lot of vertical for this template. So if you want to break it up, we can, and I could show you on this image here. So I'm going to go back to page 8, and if you want to add in a couple of your horizontal headshots in here, this is where we would do it. You can delete the image out of here, this vertical image. So I'm going to use my direct selection tool, click on the center of this graphic frame and hit delete. Our graphic frame is still there, but what I want to do is I'm going to change the view. So I'm clicking W on my keyboard so I can see what it looks like with the bleeds. Selecting this graphic frame, and I'm going to move this up to the center, like the halfway point of my document. And I want to copy this graphic frame because we need another one. Or we can use the graphic frame tool and create another graphic frame that's going to take up the other half of our document. And I'm just going to move that up to the halfway point. And you'll see in a moment why I'm going to do this. So I'm going to do is add 2 horizontal images to this page now. I'm going to click this beautiful headshot of Carol, and then this beautiful headshot of Robin. Not Robin, I can't remember her name. I'm sorry. And this one came out a little bit bigger than the one above. So what I'm going to do is select, with my selection tool, click and drag across both these images, Object, Fitting, Fill Content Proportionally, and now we have 2 images. One of the reasons why I picked these 2 images is because they're going in opposite directions. And if you had people going in the same direction, it's going to look a little odd. Let me show you here. have them going in the same direction. It's kind of not really breaking up the look of this particular layout. So by having two images in here, one going in one direction, one going the other direction, kind of breaks up the design a little bit. I want to see Carol's image here. Let's change it to this one. I think I like that one better. And click on her graphic frame again, object, fitting, fill frame proportionally. No, let's try this one instead. Ah, there we go. I like that better. No, first one, I'm just going back to the original one. Because Carol's head is cut off a little bit at the top of the hairline, I want to do the same thing with this bottom image. So I'm selecting that image and using my move tool to extend it just a little bit to the top. And then we're going to go to the last panel. And again, I'm going to select that graphic frame, object, select content, and delete that placeholder image. And now we're going to put one final image on the back of our accordion card. Let's see, did I use this one? Yes, I did. Already. Run out of vertical images again. So I think what I want to do is create a solid color on the bottom. So I'm going to move this image up just a little bit, halfway point, so I can put a horizontal image in there. And I don't want her head to be cut off at the top even more than already is for this image. So I'm just going to move this down just a little bit. So now I have a white bar of color, it's basically paper white, in the background. And I want to give this area the same amount of space on top and bottom. So I'm selecting and clicking and dragging, selecting all that text right there. And I'm just going to move it down just a little bit so it's centered evenly. And we want to change our logo and our contact information. So with the move tool, or sorry, with your type tool, select that text and change your phone number, then change your website. Oh, sorry about that. Let's make, since my website is a little bit longer than this text box, I want to extend the text box out just a little bit. Just clicking and dragging the bounding box of that text, and it's already centered. So when I move my text box from left to right to expand it, it's going to automatically center that image for me. I'm going to select that text again and type in my URL. And I'm going to change the phone number. And then we're going to add in a logo. So I'm going to delete the placeholder logo, and I'm going to create a graphic rectangle frame tool, so I can place my logo in here. I'm going to go to File, to Place, and locate my logo. And I'm going to place an EPS or even a JPEG version of my logo in here. Because we're going to be exporting this as a JPEG anyways, just make sure that your JPEG images are at least 300 DPI and your logo is at least 300 DPI. And you want it to be no smaller than the size of the text box you're creating. So I would say nothing smaller than 2 inches at its longest point. So we're going to select the logo here. I'm looking for high-res JPEG or EPS. Here's the EPS version. Once I select that, click Open, and it's going to place that logo into that graphic frame the same way it does the images. If your logo comes in too big, just go to Object, Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally. It's going to fill my logo in, but not quite enough because it's a little bit wider. I'm just going to open up this graphic frame just a little bit, and I'm going to make sure it's centered. There you go. So what I did is I'm hitting Object, Command C, and it's going to fit that graphic frame to the exact edge of where my text is. And I'm going to select that text, and I'm going to align it centered. I'm going to move this out just a little bit so you can see my align tools here. I'm going to align horizontal centers, and now I know that all my content there is centered to the page. My logo is just a little too big. I want to reduce the size of that. So I'm going up to the top where I have my scale tool. I'm selecting the text, and I'm going to reduce it to about 85%. Then I'm going to hit my tab tool. It'll automatically constrain that percentage proportion. And now my graphic frame is smaller, and I'm going to recenter that. All right. If you want to, instead of paper white, and you want to add a color to the background, go over to your rectangle tool, click and drag from one edge of the bleed line to the other. And my default has set it, filled it with cyan, and gave it a black outline. I'm going to click on the outline and click None on my swatch panel, then go back to click on the Fill option and change the color of the background. So I've changed it to the fill. Right now it's set over all of our other images. I'm going to use my my selection tool to select that background color. Then I'm going to go Object, Arrange, Send to Back, and it's going to send it to the back of that. Send it to the back, and as far as like it's behind my image, behind my text, and behind my logo. But now the color is very, very off. So I'm going to change the color of this to maybe this light blue color. A little clashy, not really liking that. This warm gray looks really nice, but at 100% it's just too dark. So I'm going to lower the tint of that to 50%. So now we have a, still not quite loving that color. There's a lot of competing colors in here because of my logo. So what I want to do is actually delete this logo, and I'm going to get a vector version of my logo to place into here. So I'm going to have to open up Adobe Illustrator to do that. What I'm going to do is actually place a version of my logo that can be edited in InDesign. Now, so if you created a logo or have a version of your logo designed by another graphic designer, ask them for a vector version of your logo that's created in Adobe Illustrator, and it's going to be a little bit more versatile look using for your logo than having it created in Photoshop. If you're going to be doing your gold foil printing of any kind, whether it's on those gold foil cards or imprinting on t-shirts or other marketing materials like bags and such, or even putting on your folio boxes, it's best to have one of those vector versions of your logo because it's going to be a crisper, highest resolution you can possibly have. Even though it's using solid, it's basically it's not a pixel-based image, but if you're going to put it in terms of pixels, it would probably be equivalent to 1200 ppi or resolution, as opposed to an image at 300 dpi. So you're going to see it's going to be a very, very sharp version of your logo. And here is the Illustrator version of my logo. I'm going to click on that. And now that Illustrator is opened, it will automatically open that file in Illustrator because it is an Illustrator file. Alright, now that I have the vector version of my logo open, I'm just going to reduce the size of this. Okay, and I'm going to do a select all. You can do Command A on your keyboard to go to select to all. That selects this file, and I'm going to hit Command C to copy, or you can go to Edit to copy. Now we're going to go back into InDesign, and I'm going to click off of this graphic frame because if I don't, it's going to place it inside there. And I'm going to hit Edit to paste, and it's going to paste the artwork from my logo in here. Using the direct selection tool, I'm just going to hold down my Shift key and reduce the size of my logo here. Move this up with my arrows on my keyboard, and I just want to reduce the size so it fits well giving it enough space between top and the bottom of that text and the image above it. With that image still selected, or my graphic of my logo still selected, I can actually go to my swatch panel and change the color. I could change it to white, change all this text to white, or maybe a dark gray. So it's just easier to see. I think I'm going to use a white version of my logo and put a red background on this. I'm sorry, not red, but the yellow background that's in this branding document. And I'm going to put the tint back up to 100. Okay, so now it matches more the look of the image, or sorry, the colors that were chosen for this template. Again, you can change the colors of the template to match your branding, but again, you would just have to import them into InDesign. And one way I did that is when I placed my logo in here from Illustrator, the Pantone colors that I used for my logo automatically get entered in here. So if you have a version of your logo with the Pantone colors in there, just know that when you place it into InDesign, it will import those file names in there. So I'm going to select that text and change it to paper white on this particular panel because I just noticed it's a little too dark. And I'm going to scroll through all my panels just to make sure that they look right, and if I don't have to make any other changes like I just did, which I do here. Changing the author's name to white so it's easier to see. Scrolling through, taking a look at everything. Okay, this is where you put your prices of your portrait sessions, and of course any of this is editable, so just use your text tool to change the text on that particular panel. Once we have everything done and everything is edited to your specifications and you're ready to send it to print, just go to File to Save As, so we can save a working copy of this template. So now you'll have the original template that you downloaded and the version that you did do your customizations to. So I'm just going to change the name. And save this to my desktop, or you can save this anywhere that you want to. I'm going to keep the format in InDesign and click Save. Alright, and now I want to export all of my pages as JPEGs. So I'm going to hit File to Export, and I'm going to create a new folder on my desktop and call it Accordion Card. And click Create. And the format needs to be changed to JPEG. And then you're going to click Save, and that's going to save all of the JPEG pages that we're going to send to the printer into this folder that I created on my desktop. So change the file name, Accordion Card Red Crane, and at the end I'm going to put a hyphen, or sorry, a line underneath. I think it's called an underscore, because after this underscore it's going to put the number, the number of the panel that it's going to export. So you're going to do it in consecutive order, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. And I want to make sure that they're easy to see and easy to recognize. So once I've done that, I'm going to click Save, and I want to change the resolution to 350, and I want them in single pages. I want to export all of those 10 pages. Yes, I do want to use document bleeds, so make sure that's selected, because the document bleeds are necessary when you're going to print so that it can trim off the excess. So once we have all those selected, yes, your color space should be RGB, because Miller's Lab, where I've recommended you get this printed to, accepts RGB files. So once we have all of those options selected, click Export. And it's going to take a few minutes to run that command, and it's going to export all of those JPEGs into that folder that we created on our desktop. I'm going to go to the Finder window, go to my desktop, and look for that Accordion Card folder, and now you'll see all of our panels in there. Now that we have all our panels ready and done, I'm going to go into the Rose program, So now I'm going to click on Order Products, and we want to select Press Products. And now we're going to move all the way over to Folded Cards. Folded Greeting Cards. And then scroll down until you find the 10 panel accordion card and select that. It will open up the Miller's blank template, and now we're going to add our images in here. So we're going to click on Add Images at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And I'm going to locate that folder, accordion card folder, so that we can add in our JPEGs. It's going to take a few minutes. And I click on Desktop, Accordion Card, and click Open. Okay, now our JPEG panels have been loaded. Now we're on the front side, so we're going to add in our first page. This is our cover image. Okay, and then we're going to go to Panel 2, Panel 3, Panel 4, and Panel 5. Now we're going to flip over to the back page, and we're going to put our back side of our accordion card on the left hand side. Then we're going to go to page 9, 8, 7, and page 6. So you have your front cover should be on the right hand side of the front page, or sorry, front side of the panel, all the way to the right, and your back page should be on the left side. Once you've made all of your, or uploaded all of your panels, now you need to select a paper. I always choose the smooth paper, and I want UV coating on both sides. I do not want rounded corners, and you can choose to have no envelopes or add envelopes for 15 cents a piece. I like the gold line envelopes because it matches my brand, and I like to put in a gold gift card as an incentive to book a portrait session with me. Once all those are selected, I'm going to click Save, and it's now been updated into my cart, and from here you go to Checkout and order your accordion cards. If you have any questions, please enter them in the comments below, and I'll reply as soon as I can.